looking forward to this presentation, but I really like it. And they're running a national campaign called He Gets Us. So he's going to show us some videos and then share the incredible resources they have. They're bringing national, world-class resources available to the local churches wherever they're at. So Gary, take it from here.
Thank you, Ted. Hey, hasn't this been good? This has actually been kind of mind-blowing for me. I lead a citywide ministry in Kansas City called Love KC, and we do a similar kind of thing to what you're doing. And I'm so encouraged. I love all of the things that are happening in the real world, whether it's law or whether it's the healthcare or whether it's housing. It's one after another, after another, after another. I'm so impressed and I'm so inspired. I wrote my team this morning, actually, and I said, I am so inspired after being in San Francisco. I can hardly wait to get back home and tell them. But I want to share with you a tool today. If you can, would you reach down on your table and see if you can find this postcard that's there? Maybe just grab it and have it in front of you. I'd love for you to shoot the QR code on it at the end or any time, really, of this talk. We've been talking a lot about what I would call the ground game. So you guys are in the trenches. You're right in the middle of the battle. It's a really important battle. It's a spiritual battle that we're fighting. I want to talk to you for a few moments, for about 10 minutes, about an air game, okay? So if you're in a battle, you have to have both, a ground game and an air game. And what I'm going to talk to you next has to do really more with the online and digital communications than things we've talked about otherwise today. So there's a campaign that's going on. You see the card called He Gets Us, and He is Jesus. We are the us. He gets us because he was human, like we're human. This campaign has three parts. We're going to talk, first of all, about the humanity of Jesus, then the divinity of Jesus, and then lastly, the idea, shouldn't we all be more like Jesus? But I will tell you, the idea of the humanity of Jesus is resonating within our culture. So he gets us because he knew what it was like to be tired. He knew what it was like to be betrayed by a friend. He knew what it was like to be born to a teenage mom. He knows what it was like to be an immigrant. He grew up in Egypt. And so there's 30-second commercials in Spanish and in English that you can go find on YouTube, and you can see all of them. And basically, the culture is being able to see a relevant view of who Jesus is. Now, it's not the whole story. It's meant to be a tease, so they'll actually want more. There's some amazing things happening with this. I want you to see one of the videos if you haven't seen them yet. Let's watch together.
A rebel took to the streets. He recruited others to join him. They roamed the hood and challenged authority. Community leaders feared them. Religious leaders abhorred them. We have to get them off the streets, they said. But they weren't part of a gang spreading hate and terror. They were spreading love.
Yeah, do you like that? So if you go to YouTube and Google and put in the search bar, He Gets Us, you can see the 30 other ones that are there. But here's what's happening. If you want to know the statistics, so every day there's 1.7 million people who see one of those and they Google He Gets Us. They end up in YouTube or they end up at hegetsus.com. If they go to hegetsus.com, it gives them several choices. But before I get to that, let me just say that if you haven't seen these yet, here are some of the places to watch. They are on your local stations for TV. They're also on NFL games, NBA games. There'll actually be 2 Super Bowl commercials. So they're all over the nation, and people are leaning in like never before. In fact, the Washington Post says this may be the most watched Christian ads ever, which is quite a statement. So the culture's leaning in, they're interested, they're curious, but none of this works if you're not on the other end, because the whole thing is you're supposed to be, this is conversation starters. I was riding in an Uber in Atlanta, talking to the woman driving the Uber. It was late at night because I got in on a late night flight, and I was talking to her about He Gets Us. She wanted to know who He was. I told her He was Jesus. what does it mean he gets us? Well, he's human like us. She says, I never really thought of that before. My mom was a Christian. I'm not a Christian. She wishes I would be. She gives me a hard time about it, but it's not for me. So we start this conversation. Later on, I say to her, can I pray for her? She looks in the mirror back at me and says, no one's ever asked me that in an Uber before. And I laughed and said, your mom's probably smiling somewhere right now. And she goes, I don't even understand what that is. So I explained prayer to her, then later I got to pray with her. These are conversation starters, and it can start with the culture, but it needs to end up somewhere, hopefully with you and people from your church. So if you were to see some of these out in the wild, we call it, you might see them at Times Square, on a NASCAR racing car. You might see it at a baseball game where it says, he gets us, Jesus forgives errors. So a lot of them are meant to just be a teaser, to make you think and to start a conversation. You might also see them on your phone. So Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and in a walkway that goes to a tunnel, they're all over the place. Over $150 million has been spent on this ad campaign by people who want to be anonymous. They're thoroughly evangelical Christians who have a deep concern that if we don't reach this generation now, we won't ever reach them. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you? If we don't reach them now, we won't reach them. Now, the campaign isn't the whole thing. It's just a starting place, okay? Every conversation has to have a starting place. If they go to hegetsus.com, they end up here. And when they get here, they have three choices. They can go to a 24/7 prayer room, and they can pray with someone right on the spot. So whatever their needs, concerns, or questions, they can pray. Isn't that great? They can also go and find multiple journeys that are set up through YouVersion. So YouVersion is the Bible app that's probably the most popular one in the world. And they're already set up. Journeys on anxiety, or journeys on peace, or journey on, what happens if you're in a breakup, etc. And they can go to the scriptures and find help. The third choice they have is what leads us to be talking today. They can also choose to talk to a caring person. That's the way it's worded here. Those that when they click on that, they can get routed right to you and to your church. So over 75,000 digital explorers have started out with either a question or a problem and ended up in front of someone like you. And then you can answer back through the app in your own computer or phone, and you can have a digital conversation with them. Now, you may think, how real is that? Actually, I'm quite surprised. I've been in ministry 40 years. I see more real conversations there than I saw in my office, because I would always spend 45 minutes talking to the person. They never got down to the real issue till it was time to go. 10 minutes from the time they're supposed to go, they tell me this big, long story. These people start right there because they know they can be anonymous and they can stop anytime. So they'll basically tell you whatever's on their heart. I lead a group of 12 people at the church where I attend. I work for Glue, but I'm boots on the ground here, leading a group in my home church. We get about 8 digital explorers a day. You can get local, which are the nearest zip code routed to your church, or you can get national, which means anybody coming through, there's one every 5 minutes. We typically get about 8 a day. So my team of 12 just takes turns responding to the needs, starting conversations. A couple months ago, I was able to actually lead a person to Christ. And we had been texting for about 2 weeks. I think she was just testing me to see if I was trustworthy. Then she shared her problem. It came in on an evening. I saw it. I responded back to her. She responded. I responded back. And then I just said, hey, do you want me to call you? Because their phone number is there. She said, sure. I called her, talked to her about what was going on, and I asked her if she wanted to pray, and she said, I don't do that. And I said, fair enough. I said, you just spent 15 minutes telling me about your problem, and I listened to you. That's exactly the same thing prayer is, except you direct it to God. She goes, oh. And I said, how about if I kind of summarize what you told me as a prayer, since you're not ready to pray yet? And I lift it up to God. If I say anything you don't like or you wouldn't want that wouldn't be you, stop me. Otherwise, I'm just going to lift what you already said to God. I said, how's that? And she goes, oh, that's fine. So I prayed a very simple prayer, summarized her prayers, and asked God for his presence and for his leading. When I finished, I said, "How was that?" She said, "Amazing." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because when you started praying, I felt warmth go through my whole body." And I said, "Awesome. What do you think that was?" And she said, "I think it was God." And I said, "I do too." And I said, "What do you think it means?" And she said, "That he loves me." And I said, "That's exactly what I would say." She started the conversation by saying she thought God was mad at her. So I said, "Do you think God's still mad at you?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Do you think that you could do tonight when you lay your head on the pillow what we just did together?" And she said, "I think so." I said, "Would you call me tomorrow and tell me about it?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "One more thing. Do you have a Bible?" And she goes, "Well, on my phone." I said, "Can you get it?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, start reading the book of John and tell me how that goes." So next morning, she says, "I still feel that presence." I said, "See, what's good about that, G'day, is you know it's not me. Like, it's God. This is God communicating with you." A week later, she says, "It's going amazing." A week later, she says, "Now I think I know how God loves all of his children and has a plan for their life. I can't wait to find out his plan for me." We're still in conversation almost a month later. So this is very real, and you can be a part of it. So this is where I want to end up this talk. I want to invite you into this conversation. So let's look at this.
There's a new movement happening in the country to reclaim the promise of Jesus' unconditional love and grace, and to see his church rise above the culture war. He Gets Us hopes to give it a voice. The biggest faith campaign in history, He Gets Us invites a rapidly growing audience, from spiritual explorers to like-minded Christians, to reconsider the radical life of Jesus. Whether people believe Jesus was God or just a man, they're invited to consider his example for themselves. Now, your church has free access to dozens of He Gets Us media assets, prayer and discussion guides, sermon series, and even apparel. This growing list of resources will equip your congregation to be ready to reflect Jesus to those they influence. So join us and thousands of churches with this unprecedented campaign to reach and change lives like never before.
So on the back of your card, it tells you about the different assets that are there. And I want to encourage you to take the card out, if you would, and just put your phone on it and shoot that QR code. And go ahead and open up your free account now. It's free because it's paid for by donors. And it won't cost you anything now or ever. And so go ahead and shoot that. The reason I'm saying that now is because you may start it and then get a text comes in or something, and you may not finish it. As long as you have it on your phone, you can always go back to it. So it's easy to do. If you get stuck at any point in time, just write support@glue.us. They'll walk you through it. You can order any of the apparel. You can order any of the sermon series, the cards, the prayer guides. All of it's for free. Even the apparel, it says, just do a good deed in the name of Jesus. You don't have to put your credit card in. Just put your address, they'll send it to you. These are dedicated people who really want your church to thrive. These are some of the assets you can see there. But you kind of 10x what's happening in your church when you begin to connect with a program like this. So if you started using some of the ads from YouTube, or you started using some of the assets that are there, then when people see you, they'll think it's you. They'll think, man, this church really has great advertising. And so I just want to encourage you to take advantage of this. Do it while the window's open. The Washington Post ran a story on this last week, and it garnered lots of national attention. You never know how long people will lean in. What we do know right now is they are leaning in now. So I encourage you to be a part of reaching back when these explorers reach out. Thank you.